FM and worldwide at kpfk.org. Please join us. Peace.
Well, here it is, that new year you've been talking about. It's a new year of change, and it's a year for you to let go of that stuff that's been keeping you back. Well, here's a way to get rid of that old vehicle that's sitting in your yard or in your driveway or on the street. Give the Kpfk Vehicle Donation Program a call at 877-KPFK-AUTO. You'll have a head start on your 2009 taxes, and we'll use the money right now to provide more quality programming for you. 877-KPFK-AUTO, and we'll take care of all the rest. You can also donate online at kpfk.org. Here's the change.
And this is your host, Julio Martinez, and we are indeed in for another hour of Arts in Review. Arts in Review is Southern California's longest-running radio show that spotlights live theater. So naturally, we glory in the spoken word. And I was deeply intrigued when I received a press release about a one-woman show, Word Magic, an enchanted literary entertainment, making a clear case for the need to upgrade English, as well as a path for doing it through the pleasures of wordplay. You're going to introduce this one woman. You're going to meet this one woman right next. So please stay tuned to Arts in Review. And I would like the greatly erudite KPFK radio audience to meet a lady I have just met, Laurel Airica. Hi.
Hello. Lovely to meet you, Julio.
It is my pleasure. Indeed, I was intrigued by your press release. Actually, it's to promote your one-woman show, which is indeed called Word Magic, an enchanted literary entertainment, which is coming to the Miles Memorial Playhouse in Santa Monica.
Yes, the first evening is January 16th, and then the Saturday and Sunday that follows, and for the next 2 weeks after that.
The show itself, obviously, is built around the English language, and I would love to know what led you to feel that you wanted to essentially make a career in dissecting and amplifying the spoken word.
Well, I was compelled. I remember saying at the age of 3 or 4 to my parents, I bet I now know all the words in the English language. And my mother said, I bet you don't, and spoke a word I'd never heard before. So I said, well, what language was that? Because I was so convinced. And then I just was born with this fascination, and I have pursued it throughout my life, looking particularly at puns and at the symbols of the alphabet. And puns are so often considered the lowest form of humor. First of all, they're relegated to humor, and then they're dismissed as the lowest form. Although two of the greatest writers in English, James Joyce and William Shakespeare, are considered masters of the language through their ability to speak in more ways than one, through their ability with the pun. And so most people think they're insignificant, and I started collecting them and finding that they have all sorts of meaning within them.
I would love to hear an example of what you're talking about.
Okay, so the easiest introduction to my work is through what I call our premier life sentence in the old paradigm way of thinking. And it is that we awake each morning and go off during the weekdays to earn our living at various jobs and undertakings until we come to the weekend. And most people nod agreement that this is indeed the way things are and no problem about it, except it's rather a burdensome way to live. And so I explained that what I do is a translation of the English language, and I spell that trance, with the idea that words put us into a trance and cast spells on the mind. So when you translate that life sentence, you remember that awake is a funeral party for the dead, and that mourning is the state we're in when we attend awake, and that we would have to be in a week days to earn the living, since urns are for the ashes of the dead. And, I was just thinking today how we call our jobs livelihoods, and yet they're so often very deadening. And then job itself is a Hebrew word for persecuted. Our various jobs and undertakings, undertaker, we know what that means. Entrepreneur also means undertaker. And job itself is a Hebrew word for persecuted. And what we get at the end of this perverse bargain with life is weekend, or the weekend of the deal. And so our most prevalent greeting to each other is hello, the reverse of which is oh hell. So often in presentations, I use a little bit of verse to explain the evolution of my thinking, which was that at first I suspected the hand of collusion entangling the language to foster illusion. And I think it's quite true that a culture's theology has a great deal to do with the word's etymology and how it evolves over time to combine incompatible meanings that may undermine the original thought it was meant to define. But now I don't think it's planned, for the thing that I've found is that like concepts can gravitate toward the same sound and vibrate at the rate that our thoughts designate, because words are electromagnetic vibrations, etc., etc. I can go on at great length in verse or spontaneous prose, so you lead on here.
By spontaneous prose, give me an example.
Well, just in our interaction, I can talk to you about this subject of mine either directly in response to your questions or in verse, since I've had so many questions myself. And then as I worked them out, I did them in verse. And one of the reasons that I did that was that years ago, I wrote a manuscript called Psychosemantics, English in Translation. And I showed it to an editor at a publishing house, and he said, well, that's all well and good, but without a PhD, you're never going to get this published. And so I went to UCLA to see what that would entail, and it was not my path, I could clearly see. Then sometime after that, I wrote a poem for the first time in about 12 years. I was at the Agape Church, and I was taking a class, and we needed to create some expression of what this closer walk with God meant to us. So I wrote a piece called First Person Singular, which is an expression of how the world looked to me, being someone of multi-dimensions in a very black and white kind of two-dimensional world. And I recited it somewhere, and the president of Higher Octave Music, a New Age label at the time, asked if I wanted to do an album of my verse. And I had only that one poem in 12 years. I had no intention of braiding language, which is what my poetry is like. But he gave me a very lovely bit of money. And so I decided to take everything I knew about language and to turn it into verse. And then the academics could dismiss it or not, but I had a way of communicating these ideas. And one of my friends said, congratulations on creating your own niche. And I thought, well, what's my niche? And I immediately knew I'm the metaphysical Mother Goose.
I was very fascinated with your description of the week, beginning. From gathering what you said, we anesthetize ourselves to the task of living by the words we use.
Absolutely. And Orwell said something to the effect of politics corrupts language, and language, once corrupted, has corrupting real-world influence. So, for instance, just the kind of the use of the word spin, the euphemism spin, when politicians stand up and absolutely lie to the people makes it more acceptable. Yet if we were to say, no, it's not spin, it's a direct lie, and that shows that this person lacks integrity, and therefore he's not someone we want in charge of any of our policies. So we do get numbed out by language. And with that life sentence for many years, after I pieced it together, I have another not quite as potent in my own mind. But after I pieced it together, there was still a big so what in my mind. Fascinating, but so what? And then what I realized is that language is the software of the mind, and it needs to be upgraded to support the evolution of consciousness. And divine mind is our hard drive. We're all wired in, and we can start directly downloading new symbols, sounds, words, metaphors, and phrases that can convey a higher frequency of consciousness in our communications and inspire a greater frequency of kindness in our interactions.
Can you give me an example of this?
Well, definitely. One example of it is random acts of kindness. That one phrase that occurred to somebody. I have a whole piece called Taking Command of the English Language. It's about a 10-minute bit of verse that is the anthem for word magic. And it's about how that phrase occurring to one person stirred all others who heard it. To be the one to release the dove of peace on a wave of love that lifts us all above our usual sense of separation must surely be the cause for an ongoing celebration, for it is certainly an experience that lifts us well beyond words and beyond anything money could possibly buy. And it goes on and on and on like that. Just this whole idea, here we are, many people believe we're at end times. It's certainly, there's many appearances for believing that. So our foundation as a culture, and Eastern cultures and nature-based cultures, there's the belief that everything began with the word, that the word is the ultimate creative instrument, sound, vibration. And our Bible, the scriptures say life and death are in the power of the tongue. And have words to that effect. I don't have all those quotes right in front of me to remember, but this whole idea of the potency of language, and it has been our foundational belief. So if we think words are so powerful that we base our cultures on it and we fight over it, then why don't we find out by taking command of the language? English has become a global language, and seeing if we can't intentionally upgrade it through spontaneous downloads of inspiring phrases and new language.
It sounds like you're not confident that this can happen through a normal education.
No, certainly
public
not.
Education.
Well, you know that that's my other life sentence, which is that, how does that go? Children are taught in school, and taught is T-A-U-T, which means tense, which is a cause of nearsightedness. And perhaps only about 10% of people are born with a vision impairment, but by adolescence, maybe 60% need glasses. So children are taught in school. They have a natural aversion to lessons, because who wants anything that lessens them? They are... George Bernard Shaw said that the greatest abortionist is he who would mold a child's character. And yet, school systems are endeavoring to mold children to the national culture, which sounds pretty unpleasant to me.
I'm kind of caught on one word you said, taught. Mm-hmm. Taught is a derivative of to teach. Mm-hmm. But you place an emotional state of being on that part of teach that is taught. I teach, I am taught. How does that relate to an emotional state? Why isn't it just a natural extension of the rules of grammar?
Well, it is a natural extension, but I feel like there's another level. It's like overtones in a guitar. There's a whole other level in which the language speaks back to us. And when you collect enough puns, enough homonyms, you create, or you can see, a cultural sonogram, or a collective sonogram of cultural consciousness. So while most people look strictly at etymologies or grammatical form, I look at what I call linguistic synchronicities, which is what's causing two words of such different origin to migrate across cultures and continents and centuries to allied in the same vibration. For instance, let me just give you another example. We're having a discussion, so afterwards we could say we discussed that subject, but discussed also sounds disgusting. And so it's like computer viruses in the English language, and therefore it needs upgrading, and we can do that.
So you're saying it could be that our emotional subtext is gravitating to words that don't just have a functional usage, they also have a usage of a state of mind, of our state of mind?
It's like a sonogram. My thesis, my thesis is that when English was evolving, the dominant cultural influence was the church, the Western church. So its concept of a divided universe by irreconcilable male superpowers battling it out, each contending for our souls. The fallen state of humanity, because Eve took a bite out of an apple and the whole world went to hell. And I'll get back to that. I have to bookmark something in my mind about that apple. So the fallen humanity, the misery of life, and the inferiority of women dominates the subtext of the language. But because words emerge at the convergence of consciousness and culture, you have what I call secret pathwords, which are words that reflect higher wisdom. For instance, the word earth, if you just move the H to the beginning, you have heart. So what we need to contend with global warming of the earth is a global warming of the heart. And this is something that we can do through wordplay and through inner listening. And as you know, heart is basically made up of the word H-E-A-R, hear. And I like to say God created planet Earth so the word could be heard. So when we put our ear to the earth and listen to our heart, we receive messages of value to all of us. And when I was looking at all that, I realized that, of course, there's wisdom in the heart. The heart contains an oracle as well as a ventricle. And the outer ear, strangely enough, is also called an oracle.
By the way, folks, you are listening to KPFK's Arts in Review. This is your host, Julio Martinez. And in studio, I have the complete cast of the one-woman show that is going to be opening at the Miles Memorial Playhouse on the 16th, I believe.
Yes, 8 p.m. in Santa Monica. In
Santa Monica. And the number to call for tickets and information is 310-899-1059. That's 310-899-1059. We're going to do a musical interlude right now, and then we're going to get back, and I'm going to really love to talk to Laurel about her specific show that she is doing at the Miles Playhouse. And I decided that since I was doing a one-woman show, I would do also an all-woman singing extravaganza today. And I would like you to listen to a lady who has been very important to me, Marilyn Harris. If you heard any of my Christmas specials, it was Marilyn Harris's keyboard work that you heard underscoring every one of the shows that we did over the holidays. And Marilyn Harris last year came through. She's done a one-woman album. She is a phenomenal jazz singer, jazz composer. And this is from Marilyn Harris's CD of original compositions called Round Trip.
This girl is going home. She's gonna pack the bits and pieces that she left behind her. This girl will catch the fastest locomotive she can find and all her romance. This girl has found her way. She had to sort the people from the toys she used to play with. This girl will not be taken from the road. She knows we'll get her back to a simpler day. She's traveling lighter than she's ever known herself to go. And don't you dare get in her way. There's nothing better than to drag her aching body home. Not after all, she's had to pay. And by her simpler way, she's got the winning combination that will open up the door to the only soulful place where she can say hello to this girl who's on her way. This girl is going home. She's traveling lighter than she's ever known herself to go. And don't you dare get in her way. There's nothing better than to drag her aching body home. Not after all, she's had to pay. Simpler way, she's got the winning combination that will open up the door to the only soulful place where she can say hello to this girl who's on her. This girl who's on her. This girl who's on her way.
And that is the irrepressible Marilyn Harris, who came to town about a year and a half ago, got 14 of the best studio musicians in town, and did this big band CD of her original compositions. And anything you want to know about Marilyn Harris, you can get by going to www.marilynharris.com. That's MarilynHarris.com. And during the course of this hour, we're going to also spotlight two other great lady singer-composers that I've had the pleasure to have on this program. Oh, and projecting a little bit further, I might as well do this commercial for my producer, Donna Walker. Every Saturday morning, she produces Kpfk Performance Showcase. And a week from Saturday the 17th, she will be spotlighting another man of many words, Mark Twain, and his Diary of Adam and Eve. That'll be on Saturday the 17th at 7 a.m., but don't let that daunt you. It's also streamed live throughout for the next 3 months. But KPFK 90.7 FM, 98.7 FM if you're in Santa Barbara. And if you're back at Harvard trying to figure out the text of your latest English assignment, you're listening to a stream live around the world in real time on kpfk.org. And I have in studio a lady who's devoted her life to words. Laurel Airica, thank you. It's been fascinating so far. I'm the show that you do at the Miles Playhouse. You're up there all by yourself.
Yes.
You've got yourself, your command, and your philosophy of words to deal with. How do you introduce yourself to an audience when you come on stage?
Well, that's sort of been a question. I have so many different ways to do it. I can do it in verse, and I can just stand up and speak. So I have an actress named Fiona Goodwin who will be doing a 10-minute greeting of guests just before the show begins, and then she will introduce me. And gosh, how do I answer that question for you? Because without giving away the opening to my show.
Well, I'd love to hear some excerpt from the show you feel free to give away.
Oh, I'd be delighted to do that. But first, since you brought up Adam and Eve, that was what I had bookmarked in my mind in terms of the fallen state of humanity. Some people ask whether these sorts of puns that I've uncovered are a singular characteristic of the English language, but I read one linguist who said that the difference between languages is a singular way of making puns. So puns have been in all languages. Wordplay is a favorite pastime at all ages, cultures, and all over the world. And puns figured heavily in the Talmud, in the Bible, in Latin, everywhere. And of course, the words that allied into the same vibration will be different, representing the consciousness of that culture. So one of the things that I've recognized is that language isn't merely grammatical, it's hologrammatical. So you can take a little piece of the language and you can see some reflection of the consciousness of the culture as well as higher consciousness. So when it comes to Adam and Eve, I have a little snippet in one of my poems that says, "It was hard to believe that both Adam and Eve were so wholly naive to the serpent's seduction that without hesitation they fell to temptation, which was the causation of Eden's destruction. Then I learned that in Latin, a word pronounced malum means apple and evil, which explains the upheaval. Paradise was undone by original pun, so that life became punishment rather than fun." So that's part of my lengthy fairyography, which is about an elemental being who takes the opposite journey through the looking glass and goes from the nature kingdom into this dimension and has to deconstruct the language to find her way back home again. And I have so much work I could share with you. I'm not quite sure. Pick a subject, any subject.
Well, you had, do you do excerpts from, you mentioned Shakespeare. Do you do excerpts from established writers to prove your point or make a point?
I only in print, not in speaking. I love speaking my own words and let others speak theirs. But that is probably how I'll open the show. It's still in formation. Fun little pun there, which is that Shakespeare said, "Out, out, brief shadow, life's but a poor player, a walking shadow, a poor player who struts and frets his hour about the stage and then is heard no more." So my belief is that life is a stage we go through with angels waiting in the wings. And so I may begin with that and then go into my fairy poem, which starts out, "I am a fairy of the garden variety, which is not an easy thing to be. In civilized society, it's challenging to fully flower when no one thinks you're real, and harder still to fit right in when you've two wings. You must..." Goes on and on like that, but perhaps you'd like this section. Page 3 of this massive fairyography entitled "The Rites of Passion of Philomela Nightingale, a Fairy's Tale." She says, "It was only in my dreams that I could totally relax, for then I'd join my real family on the wrong side of the tracks on which old trains of thought convey ideas that steal our minds away by heading off in one direction, at the same time doubling back. I will give you 2 examples. These are favorite ones of mine. The fact that praying sounds so savage, yet it also sounds divine. Or how about the way the prophet has become our bottom line? Well, I was always tripping over words, both what was said and what inferred, though I was told this was absurd. I must just follow with the herd. But I'm the very sort of fairy hooked upon addiction, airy. Not deafened by one definition to another so contrary, it misleads all those unwary of its hidden commentary to make false associations through their own vocabulary, such that what we thought brought progress ends up being reactionary. Since so many of the words we use are anti-evolutionary, it's no wonder that we call our writing paper stationary. Such a word is called a pun and looked upon as all in fun. Some say they're humor's lowest form, beneath gross bathroom jokes and corn. Well, I believe some puns reveal the way that people really feel. As the flip side of words that we so rarely hear, they're the Freudian slips of the cultural sphere. They're the inadvertent echoes of society's subconscious, where the shadow and the spirit, in plain view, are hidden from us. And I thought, as fairy poetess, I'd sail the sea of consciousness in search of further evidence confirming my hypothesis concerning words whose sounds express their very own antithesis, or else have meanings that appear unallied to an untrained ear. For I know, if only minimally, they impact us subliminally.
Out there in Radio Land, you're listening to Laurel Airica from her one-person show, which is coming to the Miles Playhouse. The Miles Memorial Playhouse. Word Magic, an enchanted literary entertainment.
Yes.
Now, what we know as the English language has been derived from many other languages, both on purpose and by accident. Growing up in Southern California, I've witnessed in my lifetime a plethora of Spanish words, of Asian American words all of a sudden being corrupted and adapted and becoming part of English American speak lexicon. How do you deal with the shifting nature of this language?
Well, I just am suggesting we do some intentional shifting of it. And I came across a quote from Confucius in Analects 13:3, and he said if given charge of the governance or the administration of a country, the first thing he would do would be to correct language. And he said if language is incorrect, then what is said is not what is meant. And if what is said is not what is meant, then what needs to get done remains undone. And if this remains undone, arts and morals go astray and people stand around in hopeless confusion. And so that's essentially what we have. We talk about the power of the word, and yet we so underestimate our own power as speakers of the word. And we've gotten very casual and very sloppy and very coarse. And so I have this vision for creating what I call Word Magic's literary lotto, where people will have the encouragement to listen to the still small voice and allow new words and phrases and symbols and whatever to occur to them, and then send it in with their dollar. And those that we select to use on T-shirts and billboards and bumper stickers and bus placards, we will honor the prophet who brought that wisdom through. And there's a lovely quote from Henry Miller that when you take a break, I'll go rifling through my papers and find it for you about what is within us all that could really inspire the best of ourselves and the best of others, which is the only way we're ever going to be happy.
So you're advocating inventing words to fit the reality of our lives? Or?
Yes, words that can help redefine
or
life.
Create a more positive reality to our lives.
Exactly that. If the word made the world, and it does with the same letters, except for the letter L, which I believe represents God. And L in Hebrew is God, L in Spanish is the, the in English is the beginning of all the God words, theocracy, theosophy, theology. So yes, we are gods as we speak. We are creating our own realities. People are aware of the power of affirmations as well as the power of negative speech to have an impact. And there has been that wonderful research done by Masaru Emoto in his book Message from Water, where he exposed pre-tested bottles of distilled water to words. He did a series of experiments leading up to this, where he exposed them to words taped on the bottle and then froze them. And this was in different languages. And the word in the A beautiful word, regardless of the language, created a beautiful crystal when the water was frozen and then looked at under a microscope. And negative words created ugliness. And we're composed primarily of water, as is the earth. So, and we don't have a language with which to comprehend and communicate about the leading edge of physics and the kind of perspective that they have on reality. We can't even talk coherently in English about the theory of relativity, which is close to 100 years old. I understand that in the Hopi language, it might be more easily communicated because of that culture's belief in an infinite space-time continuum. So time to upgrade the language. I believe a language is like a body of information and intelligence, and that we have outgrown, and there's that painful word grown. You know, who wants to become a grown-up or adult, you know? No wonder we talk about out of the mouths of babes, but we don't have similar comments about the brilliance of our adolescents who've had their essence addled, or of older people. It seems we get more stupid as we get older. So part of the reason is because there's a whole program that we get downloaded as we learn the English language, and we can conscientiously, collectively, creatively, and playfully upgrade the language to support an expansion of our understanding of our nature as human beings, this time that we live in together, and what we can possibly do as we actualize our potential one by one and inspire that in each other.
You have a website.
I do.
And let's see if I wrote this down correctly. www.wordmagicglobal.com.
Yes. That's right.
Wordmagicglobal.com.
It's in a state of evolution, but there's a lot of information on it.
We're going to listen to another musical interlude, and we're going to try to get more in depth about how to potentially save the planet one word at a time. This upcoming artist is someone who has also been here in studio, and we showcased her. We also showcased the composer of the song she is going to be singing. The singer is Diane Hubka, the composer is Kenny Rankin, and the song is Haven't We Met?
I've ordered some rain for tomorrow. The skies will be sunny but wet. And out of nowhere you're suddenly there. And I say, yeah, pardon me, haven't we met? I've ordered some sunshine with showers, and I got my scenery set. Right there with a thump, our umbrella's gonna bump, and I say, yeah, pardon me, haven't we met? Haven't we met? Accidents can happen, and into one I'm gonna slide. There's a good chance to get my hands on a little romance when two hearts collide. Two hearts collide, and I know that's just how it happened when Romeo met Juliet. Right there, I swear that old Romeo said, pardon me, haven't we met?
Entering a new year with a new president seems a fitting time to revisit the American dream. This Saturday, January 10th at 7 a.m. on Pacifica Performance Showcase, we focus on the American labor movement with Ellen Geer's Searching for the American Dream. What began with rallies, boycotts, and union halls evolved into a mission to dramatize the struggle for workers' rights and present it in the schools for future generations. Today, amidst corporate bailouts, we face the worst economic crisis since the 1930s, and the union mission of solidarity seems more relevant than ever. There are renewed efforts to create jobs, retain fair wages and benefits, maintain pension funds with sinking 401ks, depleted food banks, and a widening gap between rich and poor. Everything old seems new again. To paraphrase the song, "Buddy, can you spare $1 billion?" That's Ellen Geer's Searching for the American Dream on Pacifica Performance Showcase, Saturday, January 10th at 7 a.m.
We are back. You've been listening to an excerpt of Diane Kpfk singing Kenny Rankin's Haven't We Met? And you will also be able to see Diane Kpfk because she is performing at the Hollywood Studio Bar and Grill, 6122 Sunset Boulevard. The number to call there is 323-466-9917, 323-466-9917. And Diane Kpfk also has a great website, diane.hubka, that's HUBKA, .com. And in studio, I have the tremendously interesting Laurel Airica, who's introducing me and to our radio audience to a whole new reality of what words are, what they mean, and what they say underneath what they mean.
Well, even the word mean.
It makes me self-conscious of everything I say.
You know, in one of my pieces, I say one might more easily outrun the shadows that one casts beneath the sun than the omnipresent presence of the anagram and pun. Actually, I've forgotten that line exactly, but something to that effect. People have been aware of the word dis-ease, and his story, maybe 2 or 3, are out there in popular awareness, but the language does this all the time. It's constantly speaking back to us and reflecting us back in innumerable ways, but we've been so acculturated to ignore word sounds, even though the word sound itself means integrity, strength, and solidity. We act as if word sounds had no such validity. And so we don't even notice that the word world shows a spinning motion. And it's interesting that when someone plays billiards, I guess it is, and puts a little spin on a ball, he calls it putting a little English on the ball. Well, we have put a lot of English on this global that we share with the rest of the world, and it creates a particular perspective on reality. And every time a language dies, a whole worldview goes with it. And so English has been described, I think, by Margaret Atwood as the language that ate all others. And so what happens is we all start viewing through that prism, which is as well a prison. So anyway, what I also, there's so much to share, but what I want to share about the program is that originally I was just going to do in person what I'm doing on air with you, although I would also go in at greater length with my verse. However, I've been working with 2 wonderful women who have been coaching me for the development of this one-woman show. One is named Julia Snyder. She is one half of a performance team called the Tweaksters. She and her partner go around the world with acrobatics and juggling as in part as a way of promoting physical fitness. And I met Julia at the University of Santa Monica, which is a private university, a private nonprofit that has graduate courses in spiritual psychology. And so Julia has become an extraordinary mentor for me. And she and her sister, J.J. Snyder, who is also an actress, spoke about what is demanded of an audience to hear me go on at length with my verse, and suggested that my own story would be of interest to people also. So I have never desired to tell my story. I kept myself as invisible in my writing as I could, but I am so healed now from all of the pain that caused me to live a very secluded life, which is how I developed this material. I'm in wonderful, happy shape these days, and so I'm really ready to share this work and share my life. And so with Julia and J.J. Snyder's support, I'm going to be telling my story with some verse excerpts. And that then takes my enchanted literary entertainment and turns it into a chant fable, which is a medieval form of French literature that is composed of verse, excerpts, and prose. So you're going to hear a chant fable when you come to the show, and if you mention at the door or when you call for tickets in advance that you heard me on KPFK, then you can bring someone, and they're my guest. You are my guest, and they are your guest. So.
And the number to call for tickets and information is 310-899-1059. And you open Sunday at 8 p.m., Saturday.
No, Friday.
Friday, Saturday. You are on Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yes.
I was reading backwards.
Yes.
Beginning on January 16th.
Yes.
And you're performing through February 1st.
Yes.
And you're doing a matinee on Sunday on the 25th at 2 p.m.
Yes. And none of the show is expensive. It's $15 for adults. And you, as a KPFK listener, subscriber, can bring a guest for free. Students and seniors are $12. The price for the matinee, the one family matinee on Sunday at 2 p.m., the 25th, is $5.
You mentioned that you do talk about your life.
Yes.
And since I have essentially met you, I would love to know more about your life. Where are you from?
I'm from California. I was born in a little place called Blythe, California. Sure. And I believe that I must have I must have been a bit misguided, thinking I would come into a Blythe realm as a Blythe spirit. Instead, it was often the hottest part of the nation. And my parents were artists. My brother is a wonderful composer, a film composer, and he teaches. His name is David Blumberg.
Uh-huh.
And so our father was a painter. Our mother did lots of different forms of art. But I experienced them also as put-down artists. And I found that they spoke a sort of Jabberwocky to me, which was that they would say one thing and do another and mean a third and deny all of it, and told me it had never happened, that I'd made it all up, and how could I after all they'd done for me. And so I think that was part of what allowed me to pursue this path, because I'm someone who believes in multiple lifetimes, and that this lifetime is a culmination of a lot of work with the English language. And I don't have the wonderful quote for you. I found a couple I want to share. But in terms of Jabberwocky, I always wanted to put English together in such a way that it was just very, very musical, but the syllables made sense. And so I will be doing my wish-granting ceremony, because I am a naturally ordained wish fairy. That's a whole other story, but it's a true thing. And so I have a wish-granting poem that starts out this way. With cryptic, Kabbalistic tricks, I fix elixirs that equips linguistic mixtures to transfix. As fertile verbal herbalist and hypnotist of gibberish, I stir within my crucible all elements reducible to simple symbols that eclipse the prospects for apocalypse. And subsequent to writing that, I learned that during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, John Dee, who was the most educated man in her court, was working with a cabal of poets with the belief that it was possible to structure rhythm and rhyme in such a way as to disarm hostilities and create world peace. So I'm sure I must have been part of that group, because that's what I'm here to do today.
You must have left the heat of Blythe
Well, when I was 4.5, we did, and moved to Los Angeles. And people have asked about, sometimes people think I have an accent. And my grandparents were rather like the nouveau riche American Edwardians, and very wealthy, very cultured and educated. And at the time that I was growing up, British English was the standard for proper American English. And so some people have described my accent as mid-Atlantic. But the other part of it is that I am so aware of words as living vibrations. And as every letter, it's probably having atomic weight and giving words their alchemical fire. And so I'm very careful not to crush them when I speak, and they speak to me. They give me all sorts of information. My last name, Airica, is a name I downloaded in a meditation many, many years ago. I felt that well, anyway, long story, but I didn't know what it meant till 20 years later, and then I realized it means that I download information, and it's a eureka experience. So Word Magic is downloaded. It was given to me by the Nature Kingdom, and it's all about harmonizing human speech so that it is as full of growth hormones as birdsong and cricket choirs. So that when we speak, like in one of my pieces, Open Heart Synchrony, there's a line that says, "If our words so melt the heart, they start the milk of human kindness flowing, so that every time we speak our mind, we set another flower growing. Then I believe before our very eyes, we human beings, like butterflies, will fully metamorphosize." So it's a whole vision of what happens when we create a language together, and the probability and possibility of doing that is illustrated by this story, which is that a man made a bet in a pub in Ireland that he could invent a new word and have it in circulation in 24 hours. And he won the bet, and the word was quiz. He'd written it all over the walls in the town, and that was in something like 1756. And so now we have the internet. So if we were to conscientiously, collectively, creatively open to allow all of ourselves to download beautiful new words and ways of speaking, and we communicate them everywhere, we could make a tremendous difference. And I found that lovely quote I was looking for, if you're interested, if you have a moment. So
what we're going to do is, I originally thought I wanted to do a third musical artist, but we're at the point where I'm just enjoying listening to you. So we're going to just stay with Ms. Airica.
Thank you so much. So here's a lovely quote. It says, "There are millions of tongues in the world given to useless, idle, and destructive gossip. If all this energy could be turned into a torrent of truth, all the sick would be healed, the kingdom of God would be established on earth, and the greatest era of peace, prosperity, and progress would be manifest that the world has ever known." And I found that in a Science of Mind magazine years ago. It's by someone named Reverend Glenn Hayden. And the Henry Miller quote that I referenced a little bit ago, in terms of all of us have the ability to receive this infinite intelligence that is what makes our hearts beat, and that breathes us, and that has created an environment through which all of us can thrive as long as we have a global warming of our hearts. And here is that quote from Henry Miller. He says, "Everyone, when they get quiet, when they become desperately honest with themselves, is capable of uttering profound truths. We all derive from the same source. There is no mystery about the origin of things. We are all part of creation, all kings, all poets, all musicians. We have only to open up, only to discover what is already there." And then a lovely one from Dennis Weaver. He says, "Changing mass consciousness is an individual responsibility." And I know that it can start with the very words we speak and with the intentions we hold. It's just amazing to me, experiences I've had where, just a thought that occurred to me and an action I took then reverberates through so many people. And we're doing this all the time.
Laurel, what you have presented here and what you're going to be presenting at Miles Playhouse takes on the aura of education, and that you're proselytizing a philosophy. Do you have plans to create something more like a school, an institute, a movement?
Well, I hope to create a movement. I have. I told you my fairy character is named Philomela Nightingale. And I found a definition once in the Thesaurus for the poet by the poet Shelley, and he says it's a nightingale who sits in darkness and sings to cheer its own solitude with sweet sound. And that was how I lived. And in that seclusion, I created an enormous body of work that's almost gone out in the world in big ways in the past, but didn't happen, and I actually wasn't ready. I am ready now, and it seems I'm the flagship for my own work rather than my books. I do have a book called Horsing Around, The Inside Word on Marriage and Horses. And I have taught in classes a curriculum of word magic, simplistic linguistic fundamentals, which has children playing with words. And evidently in ancient cultures, wordplay was encouraged as a way to promote literacy. So when you bring the language back to life again for children by showing them that within every word and even every letter, there is so much magic and mystery and so much room for creativity, you can create enormous change in people's consciousness. Like one of the things I say is that word magic turns punsters into pundits.
Now, aside from the show that you are doing, your presentation at Miles Memorial Playhouse, which begins January 16th, do you also conduct seminars? And can people find out everything they need to know about you by going to your website?
Oh, they'll find out some things, but no. I mean, honestly, Julio, I'm just really stepping out now. I had a lot of healing to do and a lot of raising my own consciousness, and so now's my time. And I'm all prepared. And so this engagement at the Miles is the first big step out into the world.
And my in-studio guest, Laurel Airica, is talking about her one-woman presentation, Word Magic, which will open at the Miles Memorial Playhouse at 1130 Lincoln Boulevard in Santa Monica. It opens Friday, Saturday, the 16th at 8 p.m., and then runs Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 8 p.m. until February 1st. And there is a Sunday matinee on Sunday, June 25th at 2 p.m. And mention KPFK or Arts and Review, and you certainly will get a discount. You can come pay for yourself and have your guests come as a guest of Ms. Airica. And the number to call is 310-899-1059. 310-899-1059. And you can go to Laurel's website at www.wordmagicglobal.com. That's www.wordmagicglobal.com. And my theme music states that we're at the end of another fast-moving hour. Thank you, Laurel. It's been a pleasure meeting you and having you on the program.
My delight, and thank you all.
Thank you, and thank you for supporting KPFK. We're here because of you. We wouldn't exist without. See you next week.
Bang, bang.